Welcome to today's Explainer. We are jumping right into a psychological deep dive of a brilliant piece of 19th century literature, José María de Asa de Queiros's masterpiece, O Mandarin. We aren't just summarizing a story today, We're unpacking the anatomy of a failed hero, exploring the absolute darkest shadows of the human mind, and examining the ultimate seduction of the soul. Let's explore exactly how the human mind reacts under immense moral pressure.
Okay, I want you to really think about this for a second. If you could ring a bell, inherit a massive fortune, and literally all it would cost is the life of a stranger far, far away with absolutely zero worldly consequences, would you do it? I mean, it's the ultimate moral proposition, isn't it? In our story, this diabolical thought experiment is presented to our protagonist, a poor clerk named Teodoro. It's basically a metaphysical shortcut to fulfillment that strips away the humanity of the victim by abstracting the crime into a simple, invisible act. Today, we're going to explore what actually happens to the human psyche when you go ahead and ring that bell.
So, to really unpack this massive dilemma, we're leaning into an in-depth archetypal analysis by Professor Jonathan Acuna Solano. His work looks at Asa de Queiros's text not just as some old fairy tale, but as an enduring, totally relevant conversation about the human condition. Through the lens of Carl Jung's analytical psychology, we're going to see how O Mandarin transforms a simple moral fable into this incredible exploration of the divided self.
Section 1. A Hero's Journey Inverted, a Descent into Moral Failure.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it contrasts Joseph Campbell's monomyth with Teodoro's reality, showing us a protagonist who achieves material success but entirely fails his psychological integration. In the classic monomyth, a hero receives a noble call to adventure. But Teodoro's call is pure temptation, directly from the devil. Instead of an initiation into heroism, crossing the threshold by ringing that bell is his moral point of no return. And ultimately, instead of returning with a boon to save his world, he returns empty-handed.
Section 2. Seduction of the Persona, Wealth and Illusory Identity.
To conduct a psychological autopsy of Teodoro's failure, we have to look at a key term from Carl Jung right after that fateful choice, the persona. Jung describes this as the social facade we adopt just to secure approval from the world. With his newly inherited fortune, Teodoro instantly buys himself an enhanced persona. He becomes elegant, admired. Actually, scratch that. It's more like he becomes completely enveloped in hollow luxury. He tries to drown his inner reality in sensationalism, over-identifying with this false, glittering exterior. And this brilliantly illustrates the horrific irony of his choice. Look at this trade-off. Teodoro gains massive wealth, prestige, and pleasure, but the cost? Absolutely devastating. He loses his innocence, his peace, his sleep, his integrity. It totally ties into the philosopher Schopenhauer's concept of endless striving. Teodoro seeks liberation through material acquisition, right? But pleasure quickly loses its intensity. Instead of being freed by his wealth, our hero becomes entirely enslaved by the inescapable memory of his hidden murder. The brighter his new persona shines, the darker the shadow it casts.
Section 3. Confronting the Shadow, Murder as Psychic Fragmentation.
This brings us to another absolutely crucial Jungian concept, the shadow. This represents the repressed desires, the darkness, and the latent greed residing within the ego. Now, here's the really wild part. The devil didn't implant evil into Teodoro. He didn't force his hand at all. The devil merely revealed the shadow that was already patiently waiting right there inside him. Teodoro's mediocre life and inner resentment had perfectly prepared the psychological terrain for this exact temptation to take root.
Okay, let's dive into this symbolic mapping, where the devil rationalizes the crime, and the invisible victim, the Mandarin, suddenly starts haunting Teodoro's visions. First, the devil functions as the trickster archetype, mocking Teodoro's moral anguish. Second, the Mandarin himself suddenly becomes the visible manifestation of Teodoro's unintegrated shadow. He appears in tapestries, in the shadows, literally in Teodoro's drinking water. And third, we have the Mandarin's parrot, a creature that mimics speech, serving as the relentless squawking echo of conscience. That parrot perfectly visualizes a heavy academic term called an autonomous complex. It's an emotionally charged cluster of ideas that operates completely independently of your conscious will. Teodoro just wants to forget, He wants to enjoy his money. But memory, much like that squawking parrot, echoes relentlessly. Conscience functions involuntarily. It forces moral truth back to the surface despite all of Teodoro's frantic attempts to suppress it. His psyche simply refuses amnesia.
Section 4. An Unresolved Cycle,
The illusion of geographic escape.
Driven to the absolute brink of psychological collapse by his visions, Teodoro travels all the way to China. He's hoping he can just find the Mandarin's grieving family and basically pay them off to restore his own equilibrium. But instead, he discovers this haunting realization. Nenhuma suma de oro podia resucitar un cadáver. No sum of gold could resurrect a corpse. This is the climax of his failed individuation. Teodoro finally understands that you simply cannot cure an internal psychological rupture with an external financial transaction. So, Teodoro achieves awareness, sure, but never wholeness. He's perfectly suspended, too self-aware to be totally numb, but way too weak to achieve true redemption. But the true genius of Esa de Queiroz is how he ends the whole thing. Teodoro turns and addresses us, the readers. He implies that the temptation of the bell would eventually overpower anyone. He projects his unresolved shadow right out of the text and onto us. So the cycle of temptation remains wide open. Let me leave you with this final provocative thought. If you were trapped in your own mediocrity, just staring at that bell, would you eventually succumb? Thanks for exploring the mind of the failed hero with me today on this Explainer.